far, the Hungaroring has proved a slippery prospect for the 20 competitors on this Grand Prix weekend. But we have the perfect age and experience blend to cope with any conditions. I'll leave you to work out who has what as we join John Watson and Ben Edwards.
Thank you very much, Matt. Yes, good morning, everybody. Great to have you with us once again as we get all set for Saturday free practice and then, of course, that all-important qualifying session. And, John, as ever here in Hungary, that qualifying is crucial, isn't it? How many times have we seen a dearth of overtaking in the race itself? So the qualifying is what matters.
Yes, really almost a mirror of what we've seen earlier in the year at Monte Carlo, and, of course, qualifying here critical to the race. And also what will be very critical is the time that people choose to go out on track and the time that they want to come back in again, because we saw yesterday a situation with Fisichella coming up to turn 14, having completed a lap, coming up behind Jacques Villeneuve. He was about to start a lap. Villeneuve not prepared to give ground. Fisichella's lap was destroyed. He would have been frustrated by that, and there's going to be an awful lot of frustration out here this afternoon in that 1 hour of qualifying between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. But before then, those two 45-minute sessions in which the teams will have to determine their tyre choice. And again, a choice that Bridgestone seem to think they're fairly clear about. Michelin runners probably much about the same. Nevertheless, 77 laps around this 2.47 mile circuit. Very tough, physically demanding for the driver as well. And for young Anthony Davidson, he's going to find out what being a Grand Prix driver is all about on Sunday afternoon.
Well, let's wish him luck. Let's hope he has a good day here today. He's up against a number of other British drivers competing in Formula One. We've got a good number of drivers with Anthony joining into the fray. David Coulthard, of course, the most successful British driver currently in Formula One, and with the best prospects this weekend as well. Having won at Monaco, this might be McLaren's best other opportunity to take a victory, but it all depends really on what Michelin come up with in terms of tyres. Yesterday, as we heard from Peter, it was very much a Bridgestone day. Michael Schumacher, remember, setting the pace for Ferrari. Rubens Barrichello second fastest. Ralf Schumacher managed to pop up to third right at the end of yesterday's free practice session, and Montoya spun off in his sort of last run, which might well have improved his position, so he ended up down in 16th. No damage was done. He simply put it into the gravel, as we saw a number of drivers do. Ralf expressed himself fairly happy with the car, Montoya less so. So a little bit like Hockenheim perhaps, it's Ralf who's got the advantage between the two of them at the moment, and Montoya just struggling to get everything to work. He had a little problem with the gearbox as well at one point during the free practice yesterday. Takuma Sato did a good job yesterday driving for Jordan, ended up with the 6th fastest time, just a fraction behind his teammate Fisichella, and the two were trading fastest times between them at one point. Yes, and the Jordan, both of them looked extremely good all the way around the circuit, and no doubt benefiting from a good Bridgestone tyre. Nonetheless, strong work from Jordan. There's an ongoing development program, Gary Anderson and the team back at Silverstone, plus also development work from Honda. And I mean, we've said earlier in the season, Honda, how disappointing their V10 engine was. This was a new 90-degree V10, not very powerful and not delivering across the entire rev range. Well, they've realised that to be competitive, they've got to get back down and do some strong homework, and that's coming through now. So no doubt that work from Honda helping Jordan in a strong 5th and 6th place. And Jordan, of course, in a battle for position in the Manufacturers' Championship as well, something that they're dead keen to improve upon. Currently on 6 points, 5 behind Petronas, and remember, Cyber Petronas last year were 4th in the championship, now 5th, Jordan 6th. So that battle is as intense as it is at the very front. Mark Webber heads the cars out onto track then. The two Minardis competing this weekend in the hands of Mark Webber and Anthony Davidson. Davidson set a new record yesterday by becoming the man to get a fine in Formula One at the earliest possible opportunity. He actually broke the speed limit as he came out of the Minardi pit garage yesterday. Yeah, I mentioned it on the show. Within 13 seconds of the circuit being opened, Anthony Davidson broke that speed limit. It was a small amount, but nonetheless it was a relatively appropriate fine, $1,000, and I suspect that may have just been a little bit of nervous anticipation. You know, it seems very straightforward, easy. You see these people in the pit lane, we talk to them regularly, but when you get down to the last few minutes, then the lights go out. There's an enormous amount of butterflies in your stomach, particularly at your first time, and I think it was one of those moments where Anthony maybe didn't get his finger on the button soon enough, or maybe released it too soon. So just a reminder that Formula One isn't quite about fantasy and dreams. There is a reality, and he's going to leave the circuit $1,000 lighter this weekend. Now we're on the Jordan of Takuma Sato as they go through their radio checks, and Bruce has caught up with technical boss at Jordan, Gary Anderson.
Gary Anderson of Jordan, a very strong session for both your drivers yesterday. Giancarlo Fisichella 5th and Takuma Sato 6th. You must be very pleased.
Yeah, well, yesterday we started off and the car was pretty well balanced, so they could work from there. No big problems, that always helps. So we didn't visit the gravel traps too often, and a good positive day.
Now last night, yesterday when we left the circuit, it was still sunny and warm, but then the very spectacular rainstorm last night. Will that have really changed the track for this morning?
Yeah, I mean, it washes all the rubber off, so obviously the grip level goes down again, but hopefully that'll play into our favour because the Bridgestones are quite good in slippier conditions, lower grip, so hopefully that'll hurt Michelin more than the Bridgestone, and we'll come out doing something like we did yesterday.
We'll see. Best of luck. Thanks, Gary.
So yes, important point that about the track being washed clean last night. And as Gary says, that may well favour the Bridgestone runners. That includes the Ferraris again, fastest yesterday, first and second fastest, with Michael Schumacher a 1:16.3. We'll expect to see them down into the 1:15s, I would think, this morning, perhaps into the 1:14s. Pole position last year was a 1:14.0 from Michael Schumacher, 1:14.059. So we could see a driver getting into the 1:13s possibly for the first time around the Hungaroring this weekend.
Well, I would expect to see a time, assuming track conditions are able to give that level of time, that would come at the end of the second part of this 2:45-minute sessions this morning, because if they can't achieve it at that point, then the prospect of it happening a little bit later, 1 o'clock local time, is probably less likely. Weather, of course, a big factor here. Traditionally, it's very, very hot in August in the middle of Europe. But right now, ambient temperature at 21, which is relatively cool by the norm. Track temperature 23, humidity is 57%, so a reasonable amount of humidity in the air. That does help the aerodynamics, but in reality, 57% is not high enough to make any significant difference. Nonetheless, weather conditions should improve by the time these cars finish the second of these two sessions, and I'm sure we will see somebody, most likely it'll be Ferrari, breaking into the 1:13s, and hopefully we'll see a repeat of that come qualifying at 1 o'clock local time.
So we're riding with the new man to Formula One. It is Englishman Anthony Davidson, coming from Hemel Hempstead originally, although he's living up near Brackley now to be near the BAR Honda team. A young man who's been karting. He was 8 years old, like so many of these drivers. Barrichello, Michael Schumacher themselves started in karts. And Davidson had a very, very successful career in karts. In fact, several times national champion in various different classes in the UK. And then coming through from that to go into Formula Ford and a winner of the Formula Ford Festival, as indeed is his teammate Mark Webber at different years. Of course, Davidson coming up more recently. 2000 it was when he won the Formula Ford Festival. But Davidson, pretty impressive background in despite his young years. Michael Schumacher just coming into the pits a moment ago.
Yes, and also, Ben, just an interesting thing from Michael, his generosity knows no bounds. He's donated $1 million to the flood relief that is currently in Germany, and disaster throughout East Germany, and Michael's donated $1 million of his money to that flood relief fund.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear, John, and Schumacher, who's made fortunes out of Formula One. It's nice to hear that he's prepared to put that the way of people who have been affected by this terrible flooding that's been taking place in Central Europe. Well, it hasn't affected this part quite so badly. The Danube, as we've heard from Peter Windsor, still climbing. We were talking about Anthony Davidson. If you have a look on the Master channel at the moment, we're just looking through some of his background and what he's achieved over the years. The karting achievements, and then Formula 4. With also the McLaren Autosport Young Driver of the Year title, and that's another important accolade for Anthony Davidson. Last year he was runner-up in the British F3 Championship, started doing some test driving for BAR Honda, and has done an awful lot of mileage, in fact, this year, John, driving for the BAR Honda team, and that's the basis, that experience is the basis of what he's going into to do today. Of course, testing somewhat different to actually qualifying.
Indeed it is, but also testing, because it is different, you're driving a car maybe over 6 hours during a day, and it is a very, very demanding and tiring occupation. What Anthony Davidson hasn't had this year is motor racing, and that's the difference between being a test driver without a racing program in parallel and being a regular Grand Prix driver. And what Anthony will have to come to terms with on Sunday is when he starts in the field of 20 Grand Prix cars, okay, Okay, not be in the middle or maybe even at the front of the grid, but he's got to be able to negotiate his way around the track, and he will be involved in battles. It may be with his own teammate, it even could be with Toyota or Jaguar. He's got to re-acclimatise himself to being a racing driver, put that racing driver chip back in his brain, take the test driver chip out.
I think Peter Windsor's got the opportunity to catch up with Peter Sauber.
I have indeed, Ben. Peter, first question, how much work was involved last night on repairing those two cars that were damaged?
Yeah, especially Felipe's car was heavily damaged. I think the whole car was disturbed. But we finished 15 minutes after 10.
Not too bad.
Oh, it's not too bad now.
So is that a new monocoque? Is that the spare chassis now?
Yes, that's the spare chassis. But now we have a new one from Switzerland. Not a new, but another one from Switzerland. This is there now.
And did you give Felipe a bit of a talking to yesterday?
I think makes no sense to speak a lot about that, because Felipe knows exactly. Was not at the right moment Friday for qualifying.
Good point. Very quiet at the moment. Is that because the track conditions have gone back to square one again as a result of the rain?
Maybe, yeah, and especially outside of the line. The track is so slippery, and I think that was the problem for both of our drivers yesterday.
But right now, this morning, the track's still feeling very slippery.
Yes, I don't hear that in the moment. I think maybe the installation lab is not good enough to see that.
But it's surprising that nobody's out at the moment. Everybody's staying in, presumably because the track is just green still.
Yeah, but I think that's every year it's the same here in Hungary. The track is slippery, and with more rubber, gets better and better.
We'd get Minardi down there to go and do some laps then.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. And, well, there's lots of chat going on up and down pit lane. Norbert Haug of Mercedes, of course, talking to Pierre Dupasquier of Michelin. And the combination of these two giants of the motorsport industry, Michelin and Mercedes, hoping to bring another win in Hungary as it did in Monaco earlier on this season, courtesy of McLaren and David Coulthard. Now, Jaguar have been having a bit of an up-and-down weekend so far. Pedro de la Rosa did a reasonable job yesterday. Eddie Irvine was struggling a bit with the balance of his car. Bruce Jones caught up with Eddie a few moments ago.
Eddie Irvine, you're standing here watching the cars go out. Are you just waiting so they can put some rubber on the circuit?
Yeah, I don't need to do an installation lap, so there's no rush.
Why don't you need to do an installation lap? Everyone else seems to want to do one.
We didn't change the engine, so don't need.
There we have it. Best of luck. Thanks, Eddie.
Well, that was Eddie just a few moments ago. As we saw, he's preparing to get out in the car now, and we'll see whether they can do a little better here around the tight confines of this Hungaroring circuit. There is his teammate Pedro de la Rosa. Ended up with the fastest time yesterday, as opposed to Eddie's 13th position in the free practice. But as we know, there's not a lot to be read from those times. Meanwhile, Williams yesterday, Ralf Schumacher ended up with the third fastest time. Montoya down in 16th, spinning on his final lap. BMW power, of course. And Peter Windsor caught up with BMW man Mario Tyson a few moments ago.
Mario, may I start by wishing you a very happy birthday? Your 30th, I guess, is it?
About that, yeah. Thank you very much.
A lot of talk about potential new engine regulations or changes or additions to the engine regulations for next year. Can you talk us through what's going on there behind closed doors at the moment?
Well, it's not really about engine regulations. Engine regulations are supposed to change for 2004 with the one engine per event rule. What we are talking about now is materials, which materials should be allowed or should be banned. This discussion originated in for cost reasons and for health reasons. But now we are discussing also how to monitor and police such a restriction, and that's what the FIA is currently discussing with the teams and with the engine manufacturers.
So does that imply that the regulations as they are at the moment are difficult to police?
We could run into difficulties if they stay as they are and materials are really closely policed.
And what sort of materials are we talking about?
Obviously it's new materials of high specific stiffness, which could could allow to build parts, components in the engine or in the car which are capable of taking higher loads, but at certainly very high costs, and that's something the FIA and the teams and the manufacturers also want to avoid.
But let's say now, if the FIA wanted to check an engine and there was a slightly dubious question mark over a material, how long would it actually take them after a race to come to a final decision?
It would certainly not be possible to come to a final decision on Sunday.
Which is something, of course, you would like to achieve, I guess.
What we have to achieve.
Okay, thank you very much, Mario.
Thank you.
So, important things going on behind the scenes in Formula One, as ever. And action on track as well. We're back with Anthony Davidson here, and he learnt the track very effectively yesterday, as we saw. There is his teammate Mark Webber, sits in the pits currently as he waits to come back out. Davidson, the only car on track at the moment, everyone else just sitting it out, waiting for the opportunity. Davidson needing as much mileage as possible, perhaps, put in a good number of laps yesterday, as much as anybody, and used it very, very effectively.
They hit 48 laps, in fact, and Anthony Davidson using the opportunity, a clear track, an opportunity to go out and build up, get into a rhythm, and not really concerned about the fact that he's maybe using up tyres that will be valuable to him for qualifying and then for the Grand Prix. It's more important to continue the progress, continue that upward curve, and you can see the level of confidence that Davidson has now built up since he started some 24 hours ago, or 22 hours ago as it happens. And that series of corners through 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way down into 13 here. It's a different driver. He knows the circuit. He's found that rhythm. Watch for the bump here. And just as you come into turn 14, and using a line more similar to, say, what Michael Schumacher and Ferrari are doing, which is interesting for a young driver of little experience, down to a 120.6. That's about 1.2 seconds off his best time yesterday. But of course, on only his fifth lap, he's on a sixth lap now, on a track that is again rather green after the thunder, lightning and rainstorms that occurred last night, so it's going to take a little bit of time for the track to come back to the team and the driver.
Well, down in the BAR Honda pit, Jacques Villeneuve waits to come out. They, as we heard from Dave Richards, they had quite a lot of repairs to do to the car, although he only went off into the gravel. It did do quite a lot of damage to the underside of his machine, so they lost some half an hour while they got it all repaired and sent him back out again. He's one of only two former winners of this race that are currently racing in the Grand Prix this weekend, Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve. Villeneuve, twice winner, back in 1996 and 97 when he was driving for Williams. Mika Hakkinen won the Grand Prix twice in recent years, back in 99 and 2000. But Schumacher, the only other winner now currently racing.
Yes, and there's still this ongoing discussion that was in press conferences yesterday about Villeneuve and his future. And he says he knows nothing about the American opportunity to go back and drive in kart. But the bones of it is, from what I've been able to glean, that he would be paid $22 million, whether that's American or Canadian dollars, because there's quite a bit of difference, for one season racing in kart. But then he'd be guaranteed a further 2 years back in BAR. Now that's pretty impressive piece of negotiation, whether it was done by Jacques himself or whether it was done by Craig Pollock and Jacques or whomever. Whether it comes or not, well, there's still a lot more to play out on that particular one, as we now see Ralf Schumacher making his way around the track, and this is the second time he's been out. This is his first lap out of the pits, and Ralf just makes his way around the back of the circuit, and hoping not to make the same mistake he made in yesterday's practice when he went way off track. Just coming up to this corner now.
Now we're looking at David Coulthard, and of course McLaren will be hoping to challenge Williams particularly, maybe Ferrari as well. Peter Windsor's caught up with Norbert Haug.
Norbert, is it, from an engine point of view, a bit of a frustrating circuit this? Very slippery, difficult to get out there when there's grip.
Normally on Friday it's very slippery. We saw a lot of spins yesterday, but it should be better today. I think there was some rain tonight, which will not help the situation. It's not very hot, not very typical for Hungary. Normally it's very hot here, and I think the track temperature is now 20 degrees down in comparison to last year, but we will see.
Tyres?
Well, we need to make them work, and if things come together like Magny-Cours, I think we can do a good job, but if not, then the situation is a little bit more like Hockenheim.
A lot more curbs here, though, than Manicourt, higher curbs. Is that a problem for the Michelin relative to the Bridgestone, do you think?
Basically not. I think if it is really hot and if there is a lot of rubber on the asphalt, that's going to help the Michelins.
So back to the German Grand Prix, a big weekend for you as a company. How successful was that race? How many spectators were there at Hockenheim?
Well, we have had a Mercedes grandstand. It was packed, 6,500 spectators, a great view. We got really good feedback from the crowd there. Our performance on the racetrack was not good. I would have loved to see a performance like the race before, the week before Manicourt. But we just could not make the package work in Hockenheim.
Well, Norbert, let's talk a little bit about engines. Obviously, you've been working on your engine all year. Where now do you think you are relative to Ferrari and BMW?
Well, first of all, I think there are lots of rumors going around, and I think if we would have won Manicourt, everybody would have said the engine is fantastic, and if you lose, the engine is not so good. I don't care, you know. We try to do our best job, and we will be the best again. We certainly are not this year. But having said that, we have 8 podiums in 12 races, which is not good enough for McLaren, Mercedes. We want to have more. And people are expecting more from us. But in sport, you have some times when you struggle, but I think the ones that are discounting us do a big mistake. We are coming back.
Thank you very much.
Norbert Haug, confident as ever. We've got Montoya on track at the moment.
But just interesting in going back to what Norbert was saying about engines, there was a material ban at the end of 2000 which affected that Mercedes engine very much, and that was the ban on a material called beryllium, which is sadly a carcinogenic material, and it's a very, very light but intensely strong material, and it meant a fundamental root and branch change to the design of the Mercedes-Benz engines, and one might think that it's taken them quite a long time to get back to where they were at the end of 2000 in terms of horsepower and you know, the whole design philosophy of what they want their engine to do.
Eddie Irvine has just gone second fastest now to Ralf Schumacher. Ralf has set the pace, 19.1, in fact faster again, and 18.4, just crossing the line, Ralf Schumacher. So 1 minute 18.4 for Ralf to go fastest overall at this point, but remember yesterday he won 17.2.
Yeah, and Olivier Minnesitra, we're going to see now, I think almost by the lap time is dropping. Olivier Panis has just eclipsed Ralf Schumacher in 18.2, and Olivier Panis's time well actually that's quicker, 18.8 was Panis's time yesterday, so Panis effectively the first driver to make a significant improvement on his time.
Right, so Anthony Davidson's still out there. He's done a 19.8. That's just off what he achieved yesterday. Looking into the Sauber pits, and Nick Heidfeld ready to come back out. Scored the 1 point for 6th place here last year. On track as well, Toyota. Mika Salo was actually reasonably happy with the feel of the car yesterday. 15th only in the free practice, but he said they'd been working on the race setup and it actually felt quite good in that race mode, if you like. Today, of course, this morning they'll have to work more on the qualifying setup.
They've got David Coulthard ahead of them, and that's going to spoil a lap that would have seen an improvement. And again, Mika Salo, somebody who his lap time yesterday wasn't that impressive, 18.8. Already he's done an 18.9. This lap would have been an improvement. It may still turn out to be so, as David Coulthard just happened to be caught by Salo in turns 5 and 6, and that would have lost some momentum. But we'll keep an eye. Well, isn't he a tenth of a second down, so expect to see a little bit of an improvement. But just, Ben, have a look at the back of the... It's hard to tell, obviously you're right on board with Mika Salo, but that additional wing that they were running yesterday, just check out, because I couldn't quite see it, and I'm not sure whether it was just the position of the camera or whether in fact they've taken it off. Well, in fact I think they have. Yes, they have taken that rear wing off.
Over the bump and then through. In this lap, hard in lap of pressures, call the brakes on the last couple of corners.
to jump that far forward.
Well, the number of drivers haven't actually set a time yet, including the two Ferraris, Barrichello in the pits, Michael Schumacher. They've both completed just the one installation. That Bruce Jones has caught up with Ross Brawn.
Ross Brawn, we had heavy rain last night, and that clearly washed what was a dusty track yesterday. How much does that affect the way that you handle this first session this morning?
Well, we're going to wait, obviously, for a while until there's a clean line. We're trying to use a minimum number of sets of tyres this morning because with the Bridgestones it benefits to be able to run newer tyres for the race, so we don't want to use too many tyres this morning. So we want to wait until the track cleans up. It was in a bit of a mess at the end of yesterday, the track, so probably it's in shape. As soon as a little bit of rubber goes down, then it'll be perfect.
But it did seem yesterday that when the track was particularly slippery, the Bridgestone seemed to be a short head ahead of the Michelins.
Yeah, it is difficult to judge because you don't know what fuel levels people are running, but we were quite happy with the tyres. We seem to have reasonable grip and they were consistent, so that carries through to today. But very often we see Michelin's not so good on a Friday and then they get better during the weekend as the track improves, so we'll see. But I'm hopeful that we've got a good tyre here and maybe have an advantage with the tyre.
We'll see. Best of luck.
Now on track is Coulthard looking to set a new fastest time, take over from Olivier Panis. Well, in fact, he's already got fastest time, sorry, but he's going to go even faster here.
Yes, Coulthard, another driver who's very rapidly found speed this morning and currently on a 17.6, and this is going to see a further reduction on that. Coulthard comes across the line, well, it's a tenth of a second quicker, 17.533. An indication from what we heard Ron Dennis saying that don't read too much into what we do on Friday, and let hopes the track comes to Michelin and to McLaren in particular.
Mika Salo back in the Toyota pit here, and it seems fairly calm at that point at the moment, with Salo having set a time that puts him 8th, McNish's time 4th fastest currently in the very early stages of this first 45-minute session. And Olivier Panis still out on track and he's looking to improve further, so he's second to Coulthard at the moment. Sato is third, then it's McNish, Montoya, Ralph Schumacher, Villeneuve, Salo, Irvine, and then we've just seen some more changes. De La Rosa just popped up to 5th place.
Jarno Trulli now is going to get out of the way. This would be, we think, a pretty reasonable lap from Panis. He's backed out of it. He's decided no way. It's a shame because this is what's going to happen throughout all the sessions here. Qualifying being ultra critical, so Panis just backs off in turn 13, picks it up on the exit of 14, begins that process once again. While they're seeing Olivier Panis being frustrated, somebody who's doing a strong job. There's the man, Kimi Räikkönen, fastest of all in that second sector, got clear track ahead of him, so wait to see Kimi Räikkönen join David Coulthard, not behind Coulthard. I anticipate he's going to go past Coulthard and go fastest right now.
So let's take a look. Yes, down into the 1:16.5, and that's only 2/10 slower than Michael Schumacher achieved yesterday in free practice. So of course the Ferraris haven't set any times yet, so we can't get a good comparison. On board here with Takuma Sato.
So the young Japanese driver once again really coming to terms with the circuit, enjoying it and doing a strong job. But watching Jarno Trulli in the Renault as he makes his way around the back of the track. Olivier Panis, who ran up to the back of Jarno Trulli one lap ago, and his progress, he's actually quickest in that first sector, but the Italian in the Renault on the back end skips and jumps all over the place as Trulli touches up to the back of Anthony Davidson, and wonder will he find the same problem that he created for Olivier Panis. Well, Davidson does the right thing, gets way offline and lets Jarno Trulli go through. I don't think Davidson needed to be so generous, but nonetheless, very polite young man.
So Trulli goes third fastest. Räikkönen, Coulthard, no, in fact Panis comes back up to second, so just as he crosses the line it's now Räikkönen, Panis, Button who's just popped up there as well, and the Ferraris are taking to the track.
Yes, Michael Schumacher, first flying lap, already fastest in that first sector. There's a surprise. He came in turn 5 and 6. This is the sequence of rights and lefts that has been causing us certainly a lot of enjoyment and teams a great deal of pain, and no doubt cost as cars go over the curbs. And in the case of Jacques Villeneuve, it was at turn 4 and through that rock trap rather than gravel trap, and did a lot of damage to the underside of his BAR. But just look at the composure, I mean, control.
Yeah, that mirror-mounted camera giving us a great view once again. He's fastest through the mid-sector of the track. He's coming up through the last part. Watch him through this final turn. Watch him at the wheel there. A little bit of correction in the middle of the corner. And now across the line. What will the time be? Well, into the 1 minute 15. That's 1.4 seconds basically faster than anybody else on his first flying lap.
I mean, how demoralising can it get? I mean, take McLaren, take BAR, take Jordan, the first three prior to Michael. They've chipped away maybe a couple of tenths of a second on their laps, over a second in the case of Raikkonen. Michael Schumacher on his first flying lap goes out and just blows them all away by 1.4 seconds.
And we'll see what Barrichello can do in a moment, because he's come out onto the track as well. We're back on board with Kimi Raikkonen, the man who was such a star at the French Grand Prix in Manicourt, qualified fourth, looked to be set for victory until the moment, sliding on the oil, and Michael Schumacher diving past. Well, Raikkonen currently second fastest, but a huge gap to the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher. Takuma Sato being pushed back in. He's now been pushed back to 10th place in the times. His teammate Fisichella on track.
So Fisichella currently fourth quickest. Good time the first sector, nothing special in the second. Remains in fourth place. That lap was in fact about 3 seconds off his present fastest time. So maybe met traffic somewhere around the back of the circuit, and of course just have to be patient and wait for the track to come clear as we look and see the two rebuilt Saabers. This is Nick Heidfeld, gets it wrong into turn one, locks it up and runs wide. You can see that unloaded right wheel as it just drags, and Nick Heidfeld not wanting to turn the steering wheel too aggressively. This is Jenson Button in the Renault. Button currently looking in fifth place. Good job.
Yeah, so far so good for Button. Let's hope that Renault have got their sums a little better than they had at Hockenheim last time out, where they really seemed to struggle a little bit for performance, surprisingly. They had expected better things. They've got slightly revised engines this weekend as well. He was disappointed yesterday, said the car just lacked all-round grip. Well, today perhaps he can push a bit harder, although that time no improvement. He stays slight improvement in time, but he stays in fifth place.
Rubens Barrichello, just watching Button come through turn 14, you see we did see as he turned in, he had quite a lot of understeer. Watch Rubens Barrichello there. There's the Ferrari, so much better balanced on the entry into the corner, and contrast that to what we saw from the Renault. In the meantime, Fisichella continues Barrichello, but Michael Schumacher once again fastest in first and second sectors. Nick Heidfeld goes sixth quickest as he comes across the line.
Yeah, Barrichello goes second, but Michael Schumacher's about to get fast. He's about to get into the 1 minute 14s here if the last part of the lap comes together for him, because first two sector times have been the fastest overall. Let's see, into the 14s. Yes, indeed, a 1:14.780. That puts him 3/4 of a second away from last year's pole position. And John, we're still early in the morning free practice to be within 3/4 of a second of last year's pole already.
Well, you wouldn't expect teams at this point on Saturday morning to pump the fuel out and put a brand new set of tyres on, go for a qualifying run. And Felipe Massa once again shreds bits of the underbody of the Sauber. There you can see, in fact, if he didn't go into the pits, I'm looking down to see if Massa has come in, because clearly he would have done a lot of damage to the bottom of the car as a result of that very aggressive. He is in the pits coming through turns 11 and 12.
Raikkonen keeping an eye on the monitor. He'll be starting his third Grand Prix here this weekend, and the Finn, who's been a real star this season, no doubt about it, as we expected really after his first season at this team last year. Sauber, of course, was Nick Heidfeld's teammate last year. Felipe Massa filling his shoes there at the Sauber team, but perhaps not doing quite as well in terms of the consistency in the races, despite being great fun to watch. Now Jacques Villeneuve is attacking, pushing hard around a track that's perhaps not his favourite, although he's had some decent results in the past. Let's just see where he comes to 7th place at the moment.
Yes, 2 victories, 670 or 96, 97. Well, since then, being in BAR, it's been a pretty tough time for the former world champion. And we go back now to Barrichello. Barrichello, personal best at the end of that first sector, comes through 4, no problem. He got caught there by all the dust, dirt on the track, went off course on turn 4 now through 5. This difficult turn 5, then 6, and then you go through the sequence of lefts and right that flow all the way around the back of the amphitheatre that comes to the Hungaro ring, and it's easy if you get one wrong, then the whole sequence will be wrong. And remember, the off-line part of the racetrack is dirty, partly from the rain that fell last night, but also from the build-up of rubber that will be continuing over the second day of running here at the Hungaro ring. Slightly wide on the middle and exit part of turn 13. Watch him into 14.
Yes, let's just see. Well, it's a bit tidier there, but he had to wait to get on the throttle, didn't he? So perhaps the tyre performance now not quite so good, having done a couple of laps. Still a pretty quick time, 1:15.1, still beats anybody else apart from Michael Schumacher. It's still a full 1.4 seconds faster than Kimi Räikkönen in third.
Yeah, there's what we saw. In fact, we didn't see it on board, but that's the reason why he wasn't quite as neat and tidy in turn 13 and even into 14, contrasting to Michael Schumacher, who's having to work a little bit harder to keep the balance. Well, changing the caster is a bit of a job because it involves taking off the suspension components and either adding plates, and it's quite a big job. You know, it's one of those things that takes time to do, and you'd think you might want to do it between sessions, not sort of do it in a session that is 45 minutes long, of which you've now only got 12.5 minutes remaining, and it's doubtful they can get it done in 12.5 minutes, I would have thought.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if Button gets back out towards the end of this session. Mika Salo looks like he's on an improving lap perhaps here. Let's see, comes across the line. Yes, he does improve, up to 13th place for the Finn in the Toyota. Still no news as to the driver lineup for next year. Ove Anderson telling us yesterday they're still perhaps a couple of weeks away from announcing who will be driving for the team next year. Looking a little less likely than it was that Brazilian Cristiano de Mata will move across from Champ Car Racing to Formula One for next year.
Well, Ralf Schumacher, all this through this long sequence of corners, but here it's so easy to get it wrong. You run wide, then you got this next very quick right left, and there you see the curbing. That was where David Coulthard last year wrote off one of the McLaren chassis. He got wide. The curbing there on the Friday, I think it was very, very aggressive. The drivers and the team petitioned race director, and that was then flattened out for Saturday, and it's remained so for this year.
Yes, indeed. They had to build their car up over on a new monocoque. Ralf Schumacher, 9th fastest. That is a better time for him. So that puts him inside the top 10. His teammate Montoya down in 18th place, but also just beginning to pick up the pace a little bit. He's put a personal best time in through the first sector. We're on board here with Montoya, and let's just enjoy the view here from behind the front wing. Heading up towards turn 11, and now the turn 12 with that curb that we were talking about on the outside, and he just uses it a little bit, not banging over it quite as much as one or two of the other drivers. Now into the tight turn 13, taking about 50 miles an hour. Ralf Schumacher has gone off track. That's up at turn 6, that chicane. He had a couple of moments up there yesterday, and
there again you see the problem of the gravel here. Ralf Schumacher goes back on track. As soon as he'll put his brakes on, he'll just shoot all the gravel that's in the under tray forward. He did throw a bit back more onto the track on the exit of 6. And here again we watch to see what happens into turn 6. Turns in, turns, whoops, he feels the back going away. He straightens the car up. He gets into the gravel. Of course, the body panels, body work underneath the car is so close, it just acts like a giant shovel. And it then shovels it all the way through into the air intakes. It makes an awful mess. And there you can see just, well, Patrick Head now in team gear, and I think if every picture tells a tale, that one tells Patrick's thoughts.
Williams have had a great time here in Hungary over the years. Most successful team, both in terms of wins and in terms of pole positions, although you have to go back to 1995 to their last pole position here. That was for Damon Hill. Now, Montoya's been the star of qualifying this year. I wonder if he's going to be able to manage something special today. Looking a little less likely, I have to say.
Copy that one.
With him, and it sounds like he's backed it off.
And not much better. I think the truck is getting a little better. But it's more stable on the braking over the bump. We've gone FSC3 as well, just to see if he helps you with this braking for this lap you're on and the next lap that you'll do.
And now he picks up the speed once again, having had the little chat, and gets back on the case. And talking about stability under braking, perhaps changing the engine settings again to just help the engine braking. They can change how much engine braking affects the car, and certainly they do tend to fiddle with that quite a lot over the course of the weekend.
Yes, it's an important element in getting this whole back-end stability of a car. because these corners, I mean, particularly into somewhere like 4, you lift off, it's a short time in the break, and then you're turning the car almost instantly. And it's corners like that where you want that stability, you want to have the back end settled when you turn in, so as you can get really on the power and drive out of turn 4.
It's amazing, isn't it,
Tony,
how
you can go still higher on FSC.
he still gets on the radio, even on a quick lap, just to sort of make a comment about what's happening.
FSC4 for in lap, just to see if that helps.
Good to watch the super slow motion action through that chicane. And as we're watching on board with Montoya, Peter, I think you've got some information for us on the Williams setup this weekend.
Yes, just waiting for the radio to clear. Just adding to what you guys were saying, Williams working very hard also on moving the ballast around in the car, and I think it was at the German Grand Prix, the last race, the first time they tried changing the ballast for the race as distinct from qualifying. They moved weight forward in the car just for the race because they believe that the McLaren perhaps has more static weight over the front. The numbers they're talking about, perhaps 47% of the weight of the McLaren is over the front wheels, as little as 43% of the Williams at some races, and I think they're trying to get that weight percentage up now in race conditions to help front tyre performance.
Right, well, it's all part and parcel of tuning the cars for each and every Grand Prix.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of helping the tyres, I think one of the troubles we've seen from Williams has been the excessive wear at the rear tyre, but also we've seen on occasions when Ferraris have stopped on track, and when the car is lifted up on the crane, you'll notice that the nose of the car is very much pointing down, which indicates that the weight and the way that they shift the weight around, the ballast in the car around, the weight distribution in the Ferrari is quite a high percentage of that is very far forward, and Ferrari don't appear to have very much problem with anywhere front or rear on their tyres.
Olivier Panis still going well in this session, 4th fastest overall. That's a good effort, and again he's putting in a faster lap. A bit of sliding around there, laying a bit of rubber down, isn't he?
Yeah, just I think he knows he's quicker in that first sector. You see it on your clock or your dial on the car, and you always push. You feel the grip coming, and sometimes you take a liberty and maybe push too fast, too early on the lap. And Olivier, well, he's got again that middle sector has improved personally. So, in fact, Felipe Massa back out on track, and he's leapt back onto the top 4 in 4th place. So Olivier Panis was 4th. Can he regain it? He's got to 3rd. So good lap from the Frenchman and from BAR.
Once again, and showing the pace of the BAR Honda. Again, there are engine revisions once more. There have been plenty of them this season from Honda as they gradually try and move back up the order to where we might expect them to be, up the front. But Panis showing well, 3rd fastest. Here we're on board with Felipe Massa, who's been pushed back down to 5th, but he also looking to improve on this lap.
And he's got his teammate Nick Heidfeld ahead of him, so whether Heidfeld will be kind and teammate E or not, I somehow doubt it very much, because Felipe Massa, well, he's pulled over, done a good job, watched his mirrors, and Felipe Massa continues on his way, comes up to the 2nd split time, will be up very shortly when he comes round. There it is, he's got a personal best, so he's 1.1 seconds down on Michael Schumacher's time, and that would put him currently somewhere in a middle 1 minute, a high 1 minute 15 compared to his 1:16.7. So this lap should be better for the Brazilian, should see him go up possibly as high as 3rd place and demote Panis and Raikkonen back. He's gone 4th.
Yeah, just behind Panis, but ahead of Raikkonen. You were talking about the two teammates there, John, Massa and Heidfeld. Of course, last race in Germany, Massa wasn't terribly happy because he was actually asked to move out of the way for Heidfeld during that race.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to be asked to do. He thought he was doing a good job, but Heidfeld and the team thought that they could go quicker, and Felipe had a little bit of an argument on the radio, and it's one of those issues, immaturity and the youth of Massa against them, a slightly more experienced Nick Heidfeld, but a very mature team boss, Peter Sauber.
Look at the time from Michael Schumacher, a 1:14.329. Shatters his own fastest time overall, and just 3/10 away from the existing pole record that he set here last year. Fisichella also improves, he's up to 5th fastest, and it does look as though Bridgestone tyres, Honda engines are going well, not only in the back of the BAR, but also in the Jordan.
Yeah, it is that both teams have got much improved positions relative to the competitors. Panis a very, very strong 3rd place. Fisichella doing a good job for Jordan, about 2.5 tenths of a second behind. But really what we're seeing is what we had expected to happen, maybe a bit earlier on Friday, but now the times are going to be very, very close behind the two Ferraris. And the battle for the second, third, fourth and fifth rows of the grid are going to be absolutely dynamite, I reckon, this afternoon.
Yes, I think we're going to be in for quite a qualifying session. Nick Heidfeld crosses the line, 7th fastest, and Sauber might be up against it a bit with the likes of BAR and Jordan when they've been ahead of them most of the year. Across the line, Panis stays 3rd fastest for the moment. Interests me to see just how fast they will be this afternoon. Last year they gained 3.5 seconds on the previous year, thanks to the tyre war. Well, this year we're looking to go faster again, but by how much, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, Olivier Panis should have improved, and there we see Anthony Davidson again in 5 and 6 gets it wrong, and he hasn't made too many mistakes. The two he has made have been at that particular corner. One of them was caused by a mechanical problem. That one, I think, was down to him.
Sato crosses the line 15th fastest, so not going quite as well as yesterday, but he did get held up a bit, I think, on that last sector. He was going well up until that point. Let's see what happened to Davidson.
You can't lock up those fronts like that, Anthony, and expect to slow down and get round turn 5. So he does the right thing, just straightens it all up and drives across the gravel. Of course, it leaves a mess on the exit of turn 6 and all the way down to turn 7. Nevertheless, I mean, he's made very few errors and doing a very good job. Currently on a 1:19.8, he is 20th of 20, but nonetheless he's about 6-7 tenths away from teammate Mark Webber, who's on a 19.5.
Yeah, so those two at the back at the moment, and they are quite some way off the next best, which is Eddie Irvine. Yes, he is that far down, I'm afraid. He's 18th. He's on a 1:17.972, just a fraction slower than Alan McNish and Mika Salo. So it's Toyota's
good as well.
Towards the back.
Darcy, press the button as well. That'll be good.
A little bit of discussion at Williams as Montoya prepares to come out again in a few moments' time, but we're into the final 2 minutes of this first 45-minute session.
Yes, Kello out of 2 into 3, and suddenly we just lose the picture. Get back again, and it's now with Jacques Villeneuve, who also improved in that first sector. Villeneuve in 8th place on a 25.009, to contrast that against Michael Schumacher's 24.229, so virtually 8 tenths of a second in that 24-second span.
So let's see where he is at the second check. 1.8 seconds down on the fastest time.
He went wide, sorry Ben, he went wide. He got almost, the front wheels got airborne. He did take a chunk of carbon out of the bottom of that underbody. And I think he goes into the air, but he knows he's done some damage to the car, and he's straight in. Session's virtually over, so we might as well take the extra minute or so to get work underway immediately.
There he is, another view of that. Oh, and we've got a McLaren going wide. That's Coulthard on the grass. Looks as though he's just taken a slight detour and rejoins the track, hopefully without damage.
Yeah, it's interesting. Same corner that Villeneuve did it on, and there, well, Jenson Button's in the barriers. Down at turns, we're looking down to see us about turn 9 to 10.
Yes, well, I wonder, the front wing has been taken off. And that's very disappointing for Jenson, who was going well up to that point. 9th fastest overall.
Well, you can see he's gone off in a fairly major way. Again, the gravel, which used to be on the outside of the corner, has been replaced by that tarmac. So we're seeing Buttons off at turn, I think it's 11, yes, it is turn 11.
Quick right-hander, that one, isn't it?
It's very quick. The big problem for Button now is, depending on how much damage is done to his car, there's only 30 minutes between the end of this session and the start of the second session. So let's have a look and see. This is David Coulthard getting it wrong again through 11. Well, it just never turned. He just didn't get the front end to bite.
That was turn 12 that he went off at. Ferrari followed him, but he didn't make any contact. Now, the checker flag is out on this session of free practice, so well, at least Button's done it at the end of the session. Trulli comes through. He's running okay. Yellow flags are out, of course, because of Button's accident, and he's gone off at a corner that they're going through in 4th gear at about 115, 120 miles an hour. So I don't know whether we'll get a chance to see exactly what happened, but whatever, he has obviously done a bit of damage to the front of the Renault, and team will be up against it to get him back out for that second session of free practice. Remember, they'd made a little change, hadn't they, John? They were talking about changing the caster on Button's car. Yes, they did, and it was a very tight, I think they had about 11.5 minutes when they decided to do that, so they obviously got it done. But one might suspect that either the change was chronically wrong, or maybe Jenson was just too eager to try and find out what the benefits of that change would be, and it was down to the driver. Nonetheless, a penalty has been paid, and it may mean that Jenson has to wait out a substantial part of the next 45-minute session
before he can then determine a final car and tyre choice for qualifying itself.
So the Ferraris end up on top of the timesheets yet again, as Michael Schumacher has the advantage by 0.8 of a second over Rubens Barrichello, and it's Olivier Panis third fastest. He'll be well pleased with that, and David Richards will be relieved that they haven't had any mechanical misfortunes as they had later on in yesterday afternoon's session. Jacques Villeneuve survived, although a little bit of a moment, as we saw, flying over the curb just towards the end of that session. 14 laps completed by him, 8th fastest time, just ahead of Button. Let's take another look at what he did earlier.
Yeah, and just watch the front of the car as he exits out of turn 12. Watch how high the front gets up in the air. Well, bits of bodywork, it wasn't that high in reality, but front wheel is clearly off the ground, and there you see bits of the carbon fibre just behind the front wing, part of the veins, the deflection veins that are behind the front wing. So I suspect the underbody got a good hammering, and it's the second time this weekend that Jacques sort of brought the car back in a rather a sorry state.
Yes, yesterday they spent a bit of time cleaning it up and repairing the floor, or changing the floor after he went into the gravel. Juan Pablo Montoya clambers out. He's 11th fastest only. David Coulthard ends up with the 10th fastest time this morning. And once again, it does look as though Bridgestone have got the sums right, at least for today, with the track having been washed off. Now let's see what happened to Jenson Button here, coming through the quick right-hander at turn 11.
Well, just as soon as he made the turn, he may have just had the left rear wheel on that little bit of dirty line, very, very close, but he made the turn. It was quite a confident turn. You could see from how he came through the left-hander, and the tarmac, which is meant to slow you down. Of course, that tarmac is probably also suffering from what the racetrack is suffering from. It's got dirty, dusty, and it's not really as grippy as it would have been if it had been, let's say, freshly laid and maybe freshly washed off.
So just 3 Michelin runners in the top 10 at the end of the free practice session Saturday morning. First part of 45 minutes is over, and the 2 Ferraris on top. Panis is third ahead of Massa and Fisichella. Raikkonen the fastest of the Michelin runners for McLaren. Heidfeld and Villeneuve both inside the top 10, but Jenson Button crashing towards the end of the session. Montoya down in 11th place ahead of Trulli. Ralf Schumacher down in 13th place. So Williams not really focusing yet on a qualifying setup by the looks of it. Only one Bridgestone runner down there in the bottom half of the top 20, or the 20 cars rather, and it is Takuma Sato. Mika Salo just behind him, then McNish, Irvine, Webber and Davidson. Again, just a 0.3 of a second gap between Mark Webber and Anthony Davidson. Just the 20 cars, of course. Just a reminder that there are no arrows competing in Hungary this weekend. So we've seen some fun and games this morning, but unfortunate for Jenson Button, who now has to walk his way back to the pits. Hopefully not too much damage done, and just a bit of a frustrating start to the day for him as he prepares for qualifying later. Let's take a look back now over some of the moments from that session.